Time is like a river, old man river, that meanders around stars, speeds up and slows down. The new wrinkle in all this is that this river of time can fork into two rivers. Or perhaps the river of time can have whirlpools and time can go in on itself. In that case, time travel is something you have to take very seriously.
There are scientists who claim that time is nothing more than an illusion created in your brain. In reality, everything is happening in the present moment, in a single instant. Now we will show you why the James Webb Telescope can unquestionably prove this thesis. Physicists describe time as a fundamental concept or dimension. The function of time is to allow us to perceive the changes in motion. Space-time combines space and time into a single four-dimensional structure. Space, with its length, width, and depth, contains matter, and it changes under the influence of certain forces and the passage of time. Scientists envision space-time as a kind of web or structure in which large objects such as stars, galaxies, and even planets leave distinct traces. In Einstein's theory of general relativity, he showed how space-time is curved due to the presence of matter and energy. This curvature creates the force of gravity and causes entire galaxies to move. The special theory of relativity tells us even more about time. Like most other forces in the universe, time is a quantity that behaves relative to the observer. If you change your location, or if there is a certain distance between you and a second person or an event in which you are participating, your perception of time changes. This shows that time in physics can be anything but linear, even if your clock tells you otherwise. Strictly speaking, the clock always moves at its own rhythm. However, you can feel how your perception of time stretches, slows down, or accelerates. The same applies to large structures in space. Time flows much slower near a supermassive black hole than in other places. Time in the physical sense is related to our everyday system of time, but there is an important distinction we'd like to illustrate through a small scenario. Temporal divisions into hours, seconds, days, and years serve as auxiliary tools for organizing daily life. However, from a physical and mathematical perspective, these quantities are not entirely precise. No day has exactly 24 hours, and a year does not have exactly 365 days. We can only approximate the essence of time. Accurate subdivisions are currently lacking, possibly for the sole reason that these quantities do not exist in reality. Let's return to our little thought experiment. Imagine for a moment that a global amnesia has occurred. No one remembers what time is, and all clocks have stopped suddenly. Do you think people could continue to organize their highly complex daily lives? There would likely be utter chaos, and people wouldn't initially know what to orient themselves to. Even if all the clocks stopped, and people simply forgot about time, physical time measurement would not stop. To understand this measurement, you can imagine that with the cessation of physical time measurement, all forces of matter would come to a halt. No planet would revolve around a star, no galaxy would spin through the cosmos, and you would cease to breathe, your body would stop functioning. This stasis would correspond to the death of the universe and the end of life. At first glance, the assertion by some researchers that time is an illusion existing only in our minds might seem insane. However, the James Webb Telescope has provided evidence for this concept. When in July 2022, a new space telescope transmitted its inaugural images, the world held its breath. The image of the deep field, with unprecedented sharpness and depth, revealed the existence of several galaxies that existed around 300 million years after the Big Bang. These remarkably ancient galaxies, according to the Big Bang model, should not have existed. According to previous assumptions, it would have taken billions of years for galaxies to form and traverse the universe in the form of spiral disks or radiant spheres. What does this discovery now signify, and how does it relate to the nature of time? Telescopes are devices that capture light rays and combine them to form an image. Telescopes have the property of capturing light rays from vast distances. Even within your mind, there's something akin to a telescope as you can look into the horizon or across a room. Your eyes also capture color rays and assemble them to create a picture. According to physics, there comes a time when the light from the horizon or another end of space reaches your eyes. According to previous cosmological models, light travels through space at a very high speed, so when we capture the light from a distant object with a telescope, we theoretically see light that was emitted a long time ago. So, in the case of extremely old galaxies, light theoretically traveled for billions of years before entering the telescope's mirrors of James Webb. We, as humans, tend to think in limited dimensions. In our perception, time and space have a beginning and an end, and the idea of infinity is challenging for many. Scientists calculated the history of our universe based on known values of physics. In this process, concepts such as the beginning and end were instrumental, and the linear progression of the universe in space was assumed. Eventually, a scenario emerged, according to which there was likely an initial event, which we now recognize as the Big Bang. During this event, everything exploded from a tiny point, which was thought to be the origin of space and has been expanding ever since. Until this time, researchers calculated values like which gases were involved, what temperatures, what forms of subatomic particles were present, when molecules appeared, when matter began forming, the first matter, stars, galaxies, and so on. These processes happened over time. According to this timeline, after the initial event, 200 million years elapsed, but these were not stationary and complete galaxies. This statement is based on time, the point of reference, and the passage of 200 million years, and changes occurred during this time. But the previous assumption about these motions and energies cannot be correct. Now, the fundamental question arises, what is incorrect? For some scientists, the only way to answer this question is by stating that our perception of the universe, in which time progresses linearly, is incorrect. So far, scientists believed that the point of light emission was at some point in the past and space, and the point of light observation was in the present. During the time in between, light apparently traveled through space, and in this process, time passed. But it is precisely this assumption that could be fundamentally incorrect. All calculations concerning the cosmos, its evolution, and its expansion could be incorrect, which explains why modern Big Bang models are incompatible with the contemporary observations of the James Webb Space Telescope. How does quantum mechanics look at time? Subatomic physics reveals how peculiar the nature of not only time, but also matter can be. In quantum mechanics and related fields, scientists study the building blocks of the universe and the elementary forces that gave rise to it. Quantum mechanics has shown that physical quantities like energy, momentum, and even time can take discrete values instead of being continuous. This is known as quantization, and in practice, it means that time is not continuous or linear, but built from tiny particles, which can be thought of as super-small pixels. Time quanta function like a network, imperceptible in our everyday lives. Under their influence, our perceptions of time and the course of events within space are formed. However, the influence of time quanta disappears, much like the influence of matter quanta. At the boundary of the uncertainty principle and the time-energy uncertainty, there is a transition into a dimension where measurements no longer have precision. Various quantum models have shown that our visible world is constructed from this dimension of uncertainty in every moment. There is a theory where the universe appears as a projection of the moment. When viewing the world and cosmos from this perspective, there always exists only the eternal now, and there is no continuous flow of time occurring beyond our minds. Here, the fields of physics intersect with other disciplines such as philosophy, brain studies, and the perspectives of Eastern wisdom schools and religion. In these disciplines, time is described as a construct that occurs exclusively in the mind. Philosophers ponder the potential limitations of such a worldview, while Eastern wisdom teachings take a more straightforward approach, describing the measurement of space and time outside of us as an illusion. Imagine for a moment that what you see doesn't necessarily exist as you perceive it. You can only perceive an image that your brain constructs from the light rays entering your eyes. Is this reality, or is it possible that your brain filters out certain dimensions? This question remains open. In Eastern religions, the mind is freed from its perceptual barriers through meditation, allowing one to gaze upon the true nature of the world. In this view, reality is not linear with a beginning and an end, but consists of eternal cycles of creation and dissolution, where the fundamental structure of life remains constant. Whatever this means, it becomes clear that in the coming years, researchers will find evidence that we indeed live in a multiverse, or that the theory of the universe as a gigantic, highly mutable projection will gain momentum. Researchers might also discover that time is even more flexible and relative than previously believed.